Welcome to Tech Talks with Kinsoft. Imagine waking up one morning and, finding your front door just wide open, just swinging in the breeze.
Oh, that is literally the worst feeling.
Right. Your heart instantly drops to your stomach. You rush inside, you check the obvious spots, and the TV is still mounted on the wall.
Okay, that's a relief.
Yeah, you run to the bedroom, and your jewelry box is completely untouched. Your wallet is sitting exactly where you left it on the dresser.
So you think you're safe?
Exactly. You let out this massive full-body sigh of relief. But then you walk into your home office and you realize someone has taken your personal diary, your address book, your calendar, and copies of every single receipt you've collected for the last 5 years.
Yeah, that is a very specific, incredibly unsettling kind of a violation. Because the obvious financial valuables are safe, right?
Yeah.
But the context of your life is just gone.
It's totally gone.
The burglar knows exactly where you shop, who you talk to, what your daily routines look like.
And that unsettling feeling is exactly what we're confronting today in the digital world, because we're looking at the recent massive Under Armour data breach.
It's a huge one.
It really is. We're pulling from some extensive reporting by TechCrunch and analysis from Malwarebytes to piece together exactly what happened between late 2025 and January of 2026.
Right.
And our mission for this conversation is to just cut straight through the competing narratives.
Okay.
Because right now, you have aggressive cyber criminals making these huge apocalyptic claims on one side.
And then highly cautious corporate PR teams doing, highly choreographed damage control on the other.
Exactly. So we need to figure out the truth and, more importantly, what this actually means for your personal data.
Yeah. And to understand the actual risk you face right now, we have to rewind. We have to start with how this whole incident began.
Let's do it.
Because the way this story was initially told by the hackers versus how it was framed by the brand, it's like they were describing two completely different universes.
So let's go back to late 2025, specifically November. There's this ransomware group known as Everest, and they publicly claim that the sportswear giant Under Armour is their latest victim.
Right.
And Everest alleges that they have accessed around 343 gigabytes of corporate data.
Which is, just to put that in perspective, 343 gigabytes of text-based data like customer records, logs, emails. That is a monstrous amount of information.
Massive. And they claim they are going public with this simply because Under Armour essentially ignored them and, failed to respond by their extortion deadline.
Which is a very standard psychological pressure tactic in modern ransomware negotiations.
How so?
Well, these groups don't just lock up your systems anymore, they steal the data and hold it hostage. So when a company refuses to engage or stalls the negotiation, the hackers announce the breach on their dark web leak sites to force the company's hand.
Basically hoping the bad press will terrify investors and executives into paying up. But Under Armour's official response means a remarkably different picture. Their spokesperson, Matt Dornick, comes out and states that the company is actively investigating the situation alongside external cybersecurity experts.
Right, the standard PR response.
Right, but then they draw these very firm, very specific lines in the sand. They claim there's absolutely no evidence that UA.com, their payment processing systems, or their customer password systems were affected in any way.
Yeah, and they were meticulously careful with their phrasing there. If you read that statement like a lawyer, they are building a very specific defensive wall.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because Under Armour also stated that the number of customers who had what they called sensitive information compromised was a very small percentage.
Right.
And they flat out called the hackers' claims.
Yeah.
That tens of millions of people had sensitive personal information exposed. They called that completely unfounded.
Yes, they did.
So if Under Armour is definitively saying that our passwords are safe, our credit cards are safe, our payment systems are untouched, and this legally defined sensitive info is barely impacted, is this really just a minor hiccup? Or is the word sensitive doing a massive amount of heavy lifting for the corporate legal team here?
What's fascinating here is the massive disconnect between the strict legal definition of sensitive data and the real-world value of the data that hackers actually target.
Okay.
Because from a corporate liability standpoint, sensitive almost exclusively means highly regulated data. We're talking about social security numbers, full credit card numbers, bank account routing details.
The big stuff.
Exactly. If those specific fields aren't breached, a company will technically and legally tell you that sensitive data wasn't exposed.
Because according to the letter of the law, they are arguably correct.
Precisely. It's a compliance definition, not a practical one. But hackers don't operate on legal definitions. To a cybercriminal, your purchase history, your geographical location, and your birth date are incredibly valuable commodities on the underground market.
So the real-world fallout from losing that supposedly non-sensitive data is actually pretty severe.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, a class action lawsuit has already been filed in the U.S. alleging negligence against Under Armour regarding this very breach. So regardless of the careful corporate framing, and the reassurance that the wider breach claims are unfounded, the legal and practical consequences are actively unfolding.
Which brings us to the moment where we actually get to see who was telling the truth. Because corporate statements heavily downplayed the severity of this throughout the end of 2025.
Right. PR is telling everyone to stay calm. Everything is legally fine.
Exactly. But let's look at what the hackers actually dumped on the dark web when their extortion deadline finally expired. Does the evidence actually back up that corporate confidence?
Well, unfortunately for the millions of people in that database, the hackers weren't bluffing.
No, they certainly were not. In January of 2026, Everest's threats materialized. A massive data set was published on a popular hacking forum, and Everest claimed this data was quickly duplicated across various leak sites and underground databases.
And the scale of what was published is just staggering.
It really is. The data set contains roughly 72 million customer email addresses. That equates to about 72.7 million unique user accounts, all pulled from a larger database of over 191 million total records.
Yeah, and at this point, we aren't just taking the cybercriminals at their word. The verification process for this kind of leak is actually very robust.
Right, both TechCrunch and the widely respected breach notification site. Have I been proud obtained the data? Have I been found officially listed the breach and actually went ahead and notified 72 million individuals that their information was circulating in the wild?
That's a massive notification push.
It is. But here is the critical detail. It's not just a list of random email addresses. Many of these records contain full names, dates of birth, genders, approximate physical locations based on ZIP or postcodes, and highly detailed purchase histories.
And the location data and purchase histories are really what elevate this from a minor nuisance to a major threat. And it's worth noting, too, that the leak even includes the email addresses belonging to Under Armour's own employees.
Wow, really?
Yeah, which raises massive questions about how compartmentalized their internal data actually was.
I mean, that completely shatters the illusion that this is a minor incident affecting a very small percentage of people. Bringing it back to our earlier analogy, the hackers don't have the keys to your bank account, but they have that highly detailed dossier of your life.
Exactly.
They broke in, ignored the safe, and took your diary and your shopping receipts.
And from an analytical perspective, when we look at the balance of probabilities during a breach, we have to recognize the reality of cybercrime economics. Do ransomware groups sometimes lie or exaggerate their access to cause panic? Absolutely.
Sure. But spinning up a massive leak entry, formatting and publishing 72 million verifiable records across multiple underground forums, and then distributing sample data to journalists, that requires a significant investment of time and resources.
And I would assume it would also be instantly disproven the second anyone searched for their own data in the dump. Like, if a journalist checks their own email and sees fake purchase history, the hackers lose all their credibility.
That's exactly how the verification works. The data set is simply too robust, too internally consistent to be faked.
Wow.
Which means we need to emphasize that this specific combination of data, your date of birth, your location, what you bought and when, is an absolute gold mine to bad actors, even without your password attached to it.
Okay, let's explore that. Because if I'm a hacker and I have this masked spreadsheet, but I don't have your password, what do I actually do with it? I'm not going to try and manually guess your password. I'm going to weaponize the information I do have to trick you, right? Yeah, that leads us directly to the real-world risks. Now that we've established exactly what kind of data is circulating in the wild, we really need to bridge the gap between this abstract cyber event happening on dark web forums and your daily digital life.
Right.
The primary weapon here is targeted phishing.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's build that scenario. Because instead of a generic spammy email saying, "Dear customer, your account is locked, click here," the hackers now have the context to be terrifyingly specific.
Exactly. Hackers use the specific, supposedly non-sensitive data to craft highly convincing, personalized attacks. You might get an email that says, "Dear John, there is an issue with the warranty on the exact size 10 running shoes you bought last October and had shipped to your Chicago ZIP code. Please click here to verify your account."
If I get that email, I'm almost certainly going to assume it's legitimately from Under Armour.
Yeah.
How else would anyone know the shoe size, the purchase month, and my specific ZIP code?
Right.
It bypasses my mental spam filter instantly.
They impersonate the brand, or they might even impersonate delivery services like FedEx or UPS, referencing real past purchases to create a false sense of urgency. And this is why the actionable advice from sources like Malwarebytes is so critical right now.
Because the playbook for defending yourself have to evolve based on how these attacks are structured.
Exactly.
So let's figure out our actual move here. If Under Armour is adamant that passwords weren't leaked in this specific breach, why does a security firm like Malwarebytes recommend changing passwords as one of the very first steps? Isn't that fixing a lock that isn't broken?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to understand the full life cycle of a hack. The initial data breach, the dumping of those 72 million records, is rarely the end of the story. It's really just the gathering phase.
The gathering phase.
The leaked data we just talked about, your name, your email, your purchase history, that is the ammunition. Hackers are stockpiling that ammunition to trick you into handing over your password tomorrow during one of those highly targeted phishing attacks we just described.
Ah, I see. So they use the trusted context of my purchase history to lower my defenses. I click the link in that fake warranty email. It takes me to a fake Under Armour login page that looks completely authentic. I type in my password, and boom, now they actually have it.
Precisely. Furthermore, people reuse passwords constantly. If they can trick you into revealing your Under Armour password, they will immediately test that same email and password combination on your banking app, your email provider, your social media accounts.
Of course.
That's called credential stuffing. So changing your passwords now using a password manager to ensure every single account has a strong, completely unique password disrupts their ability to pivot if they do manage to trick you.
That makes perfect sense. Now, Malwarebytes also strongly recommends enabling two-factor authentication, or 2FA, but they make a very crucial distinction here. They specifically highlight using FIDO2-compliant hardware keys or FIDO2-compliant laptops and phones. Wait, pause for a second. When you say FIDO2 hardware key, are we talking about a literal physical key I put on my keychain? How does that actually plug into my digital life?
It often is a literal physical device, yes. It looks like a small USB thumb drive that you keep on your keychain or plugged into your laptop. FIDO2 is really just the technical standard it uses.
Okay.
Sometimes this technology is also built directly into your modern smartphone or laptop, utilizing your fingerprint or Face ID. But the reason cybersecurity experts are practically begging people to use FIDO2 instead of the traditional 6-digit code you get via text message is because of how it handles the authentication math.
How so? Because a text message code seems pretty secure to the average person.
A text message code can be intercepted, or more commonly, a hacker can just build a fake website that asks you to type in the code they just triggered. But a FIDO2 hardware key uses something called cryptographic origin binding.
Okay, let's keep that jargon free for everyone listening. How does origin binding actually protect me?
Think of it like a highly trained, deeply paranoid bouncer. When you try to log in, your FIDO2 key doesn't just verify your identity, it looks at the actual underlying URL of the website you are on.
How interesting.
If you click a phishing link and end up on fake-underarmour.com, you might be fooled because the website looks identical. But when you press the button on your hardware key, the key checks the URL mathematically. It realizes, wait, this isn't the real Under Armour server, and it simply refuses to provide the cryptographic token.
So even if I completely fall for the phishing email and I type in my password on the fake site, the hacker still can't get in because my physical key refuses to sign off on the fake location.
That is the beauty of it. The math won't let the hacker succeed regardless of human error. It stops the phishing attack dead in its tracks. Unlike an SMS text message code, FIDO2 physically cannot be phished. That is why it is the inevitable next step in securing your daily digital life.
That is incredibly empowering to know. And alongside setting up hardware 2FA, Malwarebytes suggests a few other defensive maneuvers. They say you need to be hyper-vigilant against impersonators. Always independently verify the source of urgent emails or text messages.
Absolutely.
If you get a weird warranty claim, don't click the link, open a new browser tab, go to the actual website yourself, and check your account there.
It's about breaking the chain of urgency. Hackers rely on you panicking and clicking quickly. Taking a 10-second pause to navigate to the site independently ruins their entire strategy.
They also suggest you consider not storing your credit card details on retail sites in the future. Just enter it fresh every time, or use virtual card numbers to universally minimize your risk. And finally, set up identity monitoring to track if your personal data is actively being traded illegally.
Identity monitoring gives you visibility. You can't undo a data breach, but knowing exactly what information of yours is out there allows you to anticipate the specific types of scams that will be thrown at you.
Which really brings this whole journey to a sobering but clarifying close.
Yeah.
We started with a vague, carefully worded corporate claim in late 2025. A PR statement that dismissed a massive breach as unfounded and insisted it only affected a very small percentage of people because no legally regulated data was stolen.
And we followed the evidence to a verified reality where 72 million incredibly detailed customer records were dumped on the dark web in January of 2026.
To summarize everything we've unpacked, while Under Armour maintains to this day that their payment processing and password systems are entirely safe, the Everest ransomware group successfully leaked a massive data set of personal histories.
Right.
What this proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that data corporations eagerly classify as non-sensitive, like your purchase history, your gender, your location, and your birthday, can still pose a massive phishing and privacy threat to your everyday life.
It radically shifts the burden of security. If the data that makes you vulnerable isn't protected by law, the responsibility to defend against the fallout lands squarely on the consumer.
It really does. And it leaves us with a pretty massive question to chew on. Think about this. We essentially built a massive legal fortress around the credit card number, complete with strict regulations and compliance laws.
Yeah.
But if a major corporation can lose 72 million detailed customer profiles dossiers that map out where people live, what they buy, and when they were born, and that corporation can still successfully argue to the public that no legally sensitive information was compromised.
Have we built the moat around the wrong castle?
Exactly. Do our legal definitions of data privacy need a massive, modern overhaul that protects the human being, not just the financial asset?
It's a crucial debate because right now, the framework is incredibly outdated compared to how cybercriminals actually monetize our identities. Taking control of your own digital security is truly no longer optional.
You absolutely have to be proactive. And on that note, we will warmly encourage you to visit www.kinsoft.com.au to discuss your own security and IT needs. Staying proactive, setting up those Fighter 2 hardware keys we talked about, and understanding the real value of your personal data is the absolute best defense you have in this rapidly changing landscape. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay safe out there.